Hello and welcome to the Next Level Supply Chain with GS1 US, a podcast in which we explore the mind-bending world of global supply chain, covering topics such as automation, innovation, unique identity, and more. I'm your co-host, Reed.
And I'm Liz.
And welcome to the show. Welcome, everybody, to today's show. Liz, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good. Are you ready for ludicrous speed?
I am so ready and thrilled to hear all about ludicrous speed. Yes.
Yeah, so today's episode is Prepare for Ludicrous Speed, Top Innovation and Tech Trends Around the Corner. And today's guest is Leslie Shannon, who is the head of ecosystems and trend scouting at Nokia. Leslie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here.
We are really excited to have you here. And I think we really like to understand, what is Nokia? I'm just kidding. I know Nokia is. But
I know the sad fact is that when you're talking about the future and you're talking about Nokia, most people kind of double blink and they go, "Well, wasn't Nokia in the past?" so let me just straighten that up for you right now. Nokia is a company that was founded in 1865 in Finland, so we've been around forever. I personally have been with the company for 21 years, and in the last decades, the company's business has very much been mobile phones, both the handsets, the phones, and then the infrastructure. So we make the base stations that we sell to the phone companies that are the boxes that hang up on poles that actually provide the network itself. So the handset business got sold to Microsoft in 2013, 14. But the network business, the business to business of creating and selling telecommunications equipment to phone companies and to enterprises around the world, that is still very much alive and thriving. But because it's a business to business, you don't really hear about it in the consumer side so much. So we are still absolutely here and very much concerned with what's happening in the new technology waves, because we're in the middle of rolling out all these 5G networks, and they are going to be actually the key to a whole lot of the hot new stuff that's coming up.
And that actually is a really good segue into one of the questions I have, because, that it's so interesting to hear how Nokia has evolved. But I would really love to hear about your career journey and how you became the head of ecosystems and trend scouting and what that means.
Well, there's two very interesting stories that you've just kind of tapped into there. Let me give you a quick. The Nokia story is actually a very interesting one that is relevant today. So 1865, obviously, we weren't doing electronics. Nokia actually was founded originally as a timber company, sawmills. Sawmills were actually, in 1865, the hot new technology. And, 30, 40 years pass. By the 1890s, now Nokia starts getting into rubber. And rubber is, again, the hot new technology of the time. And Nokia had expertise in it because it was another tree product. Right? So very different from the sawmill business, but with the commonality of trees. And so Nokia went into that area. And so working with rubber in the early years of the 20th century, Nokia was making rubber boots and car tires. And then they started doing the insulation for electric cables. And that actually got them sideways into the electronics industry. And by the post-war period, Nokia in Finland was making televisions and computers and all kinds of things. But in the Western world, we hadn't really heard of Nokia because in those days, Finland's largest trading partner, and Nokia is headquartered in Finland, was the Soviet Union. 1990, the wall comes down, the Soviet Union collapses, Finland collapses with it, Nokia's business collapses with it, Nokia's CEO commits suicide, and the people who were left are like, oh, what do we do? It was this greatly diversified company. All right, our backs are up against the wall here. We're going to sell off everything, and we're going to take that cash, and we're going to invest it in this new technology of mobile telephony, and we're going to put all of our chips on that bet. And we're going to bring all of our understanding of screens from televisions and computing from computers and everything we know about hardware and logistics and supply chains, and we're going to make this work. And they did. And so the reason that I'm mentioning this is this idea of pivoting, this idea of finding something in your expertise, within your existing company's knowledge, that is the kernel of the next big thing. Nokia has done this 4 times already, and I'm kind of interested in seeing what the next thing that we pivot to is going to be.
Wow.
So yeah. But anyway, but my story, which is linked to this, is that like I said, I joined the company 20 years ago, and I was working, and I've always been on the network side, but I was working in the Nokia headquarters in Finland, and I had a front row seat for the crash and burn of the handset division. And in fact, my husband was working in the handset division at that time, so I really was, right there. And one of the main reasons that the handset division they were shooting for 40% market share globally in the handsets, and they achieved that in 2006. And in 2007, the iPhone came out. And I remember, I was in Finland at headquarters when the iPhone came out. The original iPhone, it wasn't even 3G. And so all of us in the telco world were like, oh, this computer company making a phone, sure, it's pretty, but they don't understand our industry. That is not important for us. We have total market share. We won. And the thing is that we stopped looking around at the innovation that was happening. And the main thing that we missed was the shift from hardware, where Nokia dominated. And if you're dealing with hardware, then logistics and supply chains, because Nokia's supply chain was second to none back in the day in our ability to put together a phone and ship it cheaply anywhere in the world, to software. Because what Apple's really good at, yeah, their hardware's good, but where their innovation was software. And if you're shifting to software, now suddenly the logistics stuff, it is important, it's not as important. And so suddenly the things that we had built up as our major areas of expertise, we were completely crushed by the competition, who developed in an area that we had not taken seriously. And that, guess what? The customers of the world preferred their product to ours. And that's it. That's all she wrote.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was you just blew my mind in a couple of
Oh wait, and I forgot the last part. I'm sorry, I keep getting stuck on the Nokia track. And so I was in Finland, and then 5 years ago I came to Silicon Valley. And in Finland, telco, because Nokia is just a gigantic presence within Finland. And so therefore telco is a gigantic presence within Finland. All of industry is really dominated by this telco kind of thinking. Well, I get to Silicon Valley 5 years ago, and I look around, I'm like, oh, telco is not so important here. In fact, it's kind of got a infrastructure-y government kind of vibe. And okay, well, what is important? And I look around, and I'm like, oh, it's artificial intelligence, it's augmented reality, it's visual analytics, it's robotics, it's drones. The good news is these are all things that telco supports, so still good for my industry, but telco is not front and center in any of this stuff. And so I took it upon myself to just start telling our customers and our Nokia leadership, this is what I'm seeing in Silicon Valley. That was actually not my job. I was sent here to do something else. But when I saw there was so much going on that my entire industry was ignoring, I thought, okay, it's time for me to start just going around and finding out what I can find and just broadcasting it to our customers to see if we can give them a competitive advantage. And so that's actually how my job as the head of ecosystem and trend scouting came about within Nokia. I kind of made it up myself because I saw the need.
Well, and obviously there is a need, and Nokia has been so good at it, and you just extended it, right, in a whole different direction. It's just so cool. I was listening to your GS1 Connect presentation, and all of that really cool technology. One that's here, but two that's coming is just awesome. You said in actually that talk that the past year or two now, although time is a little nebulous these days, has been accelerated by 6 years. What does that mean to you from a technology perspective?
Yeah, and to explain that figure actually came from an analyst looking at the pace of adoption of technology, and their conclusion was that the year of 2020 actually accelerated technology adoption by about 6 years. And there's a couple of really good examples of the actual impact of this. Now, one of the new technologies that's coming out that we're seeing a lot of take up of is augmented reality in particularly industrial and manufacturing workplaces, but also in field force. So you've got somebody who's got some glasses that they're wearing on their head, and if they need an expert to help them, they can, tap a button or something, and then a camera switches on in the headset, and then an expert who is somewhere else far away can actually see what they're seeing and talk them through. And especially with COVID, this became particularly important because now instead of having a team of 5 people going through a plant to do whatever needs to be done, you've got a team of 1 person, and you need the other 4 experts who might not be able to be there because of social distancing, actually being able to see and to tell the single person what to do. So these kinds of technologies had been kind of carrying along, and a really good example of this is Porsche. They worked with a company called Athere to develop what they call their Tech Live Look glasses for their mechanics. In 2018, I mean, this is several years ago already, and so they developed these, and they discovered that that car repairs went up to 40% faster when the mechanics were able to pull in an expert using these glasses anytime they weren't sure about something. But here's the reality, because people are people, and putting on these glasses on a shop floor, it's kind of weird, and not only is there kind of this like, oh, I feel weird about using this new technology, but there's also a pride factor, right? Because as soon as you put on the glasses, everybody knows you don't know what you're doing. You have to ask somebody else. It's like, oh, I don't want to admit that. And so rather than thinking about it as, oh, the person's learning, so they found that the actual usage of the glasses was, less than they were hoping. But then after COVID strikes, and now suddenly you've got the mechanic on his or her own, and the only way to get access to the expert is through these glasses, they found that the usage of the glasses went up by 300%. And
Wow.
so it's not so much the development of new technology, it's the adoption. Necessity is the mother of invention, and necessity is the mother of adoption. So all these things that were a little bit fringe, I mean, like mRNA vaccine itself, things that had already been developed, but were kind of sitting around in the wings waiting for people to start using it. Suddenly, with the COVID moment, when people are looking for new tools, all of these new things start coming in and start getting used, and people go, oh, this is really good. I'm going to keep using it.
That is so wild. So it's part of a necessity. Some things have been around, and then it's a psychological aspect, and it seems like it's also a new social engineering that's happening because of the pandemic.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I'm kind of keeping my eye on is the whole, back to work thing. Are we going to go back to offices? Does it make any sense to do that? Because there was a study done in the States. The average American saved 8.6 days worth of time by not commuting in 2020.
Wow.
Yeah. And so do you want to give up a whole week of your life again to just sitting in the car in the traffic on the highway?
Yeah.
Many people are going to go, no, I can find better ways to use my time. And then if you put this together with other movements, like kind of there's the global movement towards the 15-minute city, where the concept is that you should be able to have things be more local, so that wherever you live in a city, you should be able to walk to some large percentage of all the services that you need within 15 minutes walking radius of your home. So the combination of not being able to have more distributed living situations, because not everybody needs to go into the office now, and time saved from the commute, and then the rise of kind of rethinking urban spaces, and then of course shifting to the non-ownership of cars, so using just kind of ride sharing whenever you need it. Suddenly you don't have to worry so much about the parking space availability in urban areas, and that suddenly frees up a whole bunch more areas. All of these things are feeding into each other and feeding on each other, and COVID kind of really showed us all a new way that we could do things that I think will actually ultimately make us more open to the changing urban landscape and the patterns of how we move and how our goods move that we're going to really see developing over the next decade.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We're seeing that. I'm very familiar with the 15-minute city, and we're seeing this 6-year acceleration within grocery specifically. Grocery's adoption of e-commerce was a cost center for them in a big way. Because they weren't reaping the benefits. They had to add more tech. They had to add more people. I mean, to send an order in online and then have someone else go pick it up. A lot of people forget that the shopper is the employee at the grocery shop, right? I go in, I'm the shopper, I pick all my goods, and I go and check myself out.
My God, you're right. It's like IKEA. They make us build our own groceries.
That's right. Without words. But so we've heard the grocery industry say that they've sped up. Everything that they were working on has been pulled forward, right? So what they were planning for 5 and 10 years out, they're doing today. So they've already seen that acceleration. And in the industry, those that were working on this as quote unquote potentials or futuristic stuff, they've thrived. And the ones that didn't invest in looking around the corner are struggling. I'd like to change gears here. I mean, we could talk all day. I mean, this is super exciting. My brain is really.
I know it's so hard to narrow anything down.
But I wanted to just change this a little bit and see the immediate things that you're seeing emerging in the marketplace. So you mentioned augmented reality, and I could have used those glasses last night with my in-laws to help them. They're 700 miles away and they had an IT problem with Disney Plus and Netflix that took me an hour and a half.
Oh my, you are yes.
But let's jump to artificial intelligence. What are some, emerging things that you're seeing out there that, folks might not be aware of? I mean, we all hear artificial intelligence is in everything now and it's driving stuff. But what are you seeing from your perspective?
Well, the areas that I'm and of course I'm coming at this from my own narrow telco focused lens here, because I only really pay attention to tech as if it's a business opportunity for me over in the telco space. So I definitely don't speak for all of artificial intelligence, but with that limitation, the things that I'm seeing that are really going to make a huge difference are process automation and visual analytics. And so I mean, process automation, that's kind of clear, what that is. But then, but we're doing things, for example, we were working with a factory in Spain, and this is a Nokia thing. And so we have 5G cameras all around it's some kind of manufacturing. I don't know what they're manufacturing, something. With 5G cameras all around the shop floor. And the 5G is important because that means you don't have to worry about running a wire to that camera, other than power, of course. But, every wire less that you have on a shop floor is easier. And also 5G gets you high definition video. So you get these cameras around, and they're watching the machines, each individual machines, in a whole kind of flow of whatever the process is. And let's just say there's 4 machines in the flow. And if one machine starts slowing down just a bit, of course that's going to affect the productivity of the whole system. And just the slowing down can be just enough that we humans don't see it or realize it. But with visual analytics, you can and artificial intelligence doing real-time analysis of what's actually going on the shop floor, you can get a flag super early. This machine slowed down 30 seconds ago, and you need to do X, Y, or Z, so it'll speed up again, so that your assembly, what is coming off the line isn't affected at all. So these are, super, and this is the kind of thing, it's kind of in the background, and but it's going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for a lot of the processes that we have in almost every industry. And because I don't know how much visual analytics is talked about in the supply chain world. I know that out there kind of in public, visual analytics quite often gets linked to facial recognition. And of course, there's all kinds of problems with that and ethics and stuff like that. But visual analytics as a way to understand if a process is working well, and to do spot checks, and to particularly humans that are working on a factory floor and building things, if they wire something wrongly, then bing, there's an immediate hey, that wire is supposed to go to that terminal over there, not this terminal that you just attached it to. These can be things that really improve productivity and efficiency in a very just kind of in the background kind of way that I think we're going to accept very quickly.
Wow. Excellent. Thank you. I think Liz had a question. She's pinging me here. She had a question for you.
I do. And I hate to go back. I'm not going back to the pandemic, I promise. But when you see that quick acceleration of technology, both because we had to, but also because if you didn't, you would be left behind. And all the consumers, whatever industry you're in, you had to adjust, right? Everything was different. And then you give that example of artificial intelligence and things that have been around and changed. But with all of this innovation acceleration and technology acceleration post-pandemic, do you see innovation unfolding moving forward this quickly? Do you think it will accelerate? Do you think it'll plateau? Just like from your gut, because you're really around this every single day.
Yeah, it's the you put a frog in boiling water, it's going to jump out. You put the frog in cool water and heat it up, and the frog will just think it's in a nice warm bath until suddenly it's been boiled. That's kind of it. The pace. I think the pace of innovation is going to continue at the same pace, but most of us, unless we're actually looking at it, we're not going to notice.
Yeah.
And maybe the frog isn't a very good analogy because that doesn't really have a happy ending. But it's the kind of thing where if you look back, 10 years ago, I didn't use Google Maps every day because it didn't really exist. And now, can I get through a day without Google Maps? Absolutely not.
It's so funny you say that, because I'm sorry to interrupt, but I always prided myself on, I know where I'm going. We know where we're going. I don't need directions. And now I won't even get in the car without turning it on, because what if there's an accident?
Right.
It's wild. It's changed you.
It is. And the thing is, the successful technology is, it's the stuff that solves problems for you. And so you pick it up and you start using it. And if it solves a problem that you have, and it solves it well, then you really kind of stop looking at it as technology. I think it was Douglas Adams who said, technology is what we call the stuff that doesn't quite work right yet. And when things just kind of slip into the easiness of every day because it's solving a problem for us, then that's 10 years later we look back and go, oh my God, I didn't have that 10 years ago. How did this possibly? How did I possibly live that way? So yeah, I think we are going to see the same increased pace, because a rocket was lit under the tail of so many different industries in this past year, and because there's been acceptance. One of my favorite topics in this area is the topic of digital selves, and if I say to you digital self, you're well, what's going on? Well, a lot of people during the pandemic, when they couldn't actually be with other people, they started meeting on Zoom. They started seeing digital representations. Okay, it's on a video screen, so that's not so weird. But we started doing that with each other. But then a lot of other kinds of things that would have happened in the real world started getting moved into video games. Like Animal Crossing came out in March, right as the pandemic hit. And Minecraft, there were a lot of graduations that happened in Animal Crossing or Minecraft, because they're games where people have avatars and you can get together with other people. And so people took their real world activities and moved them into these virtual spaces because they still wanted to have that activity because it had meaning for them. And so I've seen weddings, I've seen funerals, and I've seen graduations, all of which happened in Minecraft, Roblox, and Animal Crossing.
Wow.
And so this idea, and of course not everybody was in there getting married in Animal Crossing, but the ease with which we moved a significant representation of ourselves and our real world selves onto these virtual platforms. And it was gaming because those are the virtual platforms that existed. The ease with which we did that tells me that going forward, the concept of the digital self and the portability of the digital self and the integration of the digital self with our physical selves, that for me, I think, is probably going to be the biggest long-term disruption of the COVID time. We came to learn that we could have a digital representation of ourselves in a virtual world and have it have meaning, and be able to do significant things in it, and it was acceptable, and it was fine. And I think that element is only going to grow. And it's going to tie into being able to visit other people via holograms and all this other stuff that's still very much in the future. But the acceptance of ourselves, the acceptance of our digital selves, and the acceptance of the digital representations of others, that happened last year, and that was not true before.
Yeah, I'll tell you, we've been doing a lot on digital twins for manufacturers and
Right.
and those types of things. But this is a bit different. And I think, the pandemic has shown us resiliency in a lot of areas, both personally, financially, culturally. It's really exposed a lot of things because we've been on this journey, but it's kind of like the frog, right? It's the water was boiled a lot faster for us because
Right.
of the pandemic. I'd like to switch gears here for you because, again, I'm just keeping track of the time. But just switching gears, we talk to a lot of organizations, and what advice do you have for companies or groups who are trying to get ahead of the curve? For those companies that aren't fortunate enough to have, a Leslie like yourself on staff, what advice do you have for them? What are some learnings you could share?
Well, I think it's always worthwhile investing time, and I was about to say spending time, but no, it's really investing time because you're going to get something back out of it. Investing time in thinking about what challenges could come to you from completely kooky, unexpected places. And again, that's the voice of Nokia speaking right there. We were not looking outside our own industry box, and we got completely sideswiped. And everything will always be changing. And if you're not the one who's leading that shift from sawmills to rubber production, somebody else is going to do it. And and so it's going to happen. In fact, I think. A couple of years ago, again, sorry, a telco example, but AT&T, when they bought the Dish satellite company, some analysts were asking the CEO of AT&T, well, why are you doing that? Because you have your own television product. Why are you buying this thing that's a direct competitor? And his answer was, our customers are already showing us what they prefer. And if we don't disrupt ourselves, somebody else is going to provide this service for them. So yeah, it might, not provide the best revenues in the short term, but long term, it's what you have to do to stay in the game. So if you find yourself ever thinking, well, this is how we've always done it, whack, danger sign.
Yeah. Yeah,
You need to
famous
question.
words.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Question your assumptions. So having there's lots of great futurists out there and futurist companies. Inviting them to come in and have sessions with you, the leadership of your company.
That's excellent.
Great idea. Great idea. Another thing that's actually really cool. I wasn't Procter and Gamble. I just read about this. Procter and Gamble, I think 20 years ago. Sorry, a little fuzzy on the timeline. They could see that their that bio soap. I don't know the right terms here, but the bio stuff was coming up, and all their soap was kind of old traditional non-bio soap, and all of their leadership of their company, they had come of age in the old paradigm. So what they did was they called it reverse mentoring. They selected a bunch of young, and the emphasis is on young, recently graduated chemists who were within the company, and had them meet with the executives and coach them on what's going on in the biospace. Like every once a week for 3 months. I don't know what it was. But at the end, the executives all felt much better in touch with the new things that were happening in their industry, and they were able to successfully lead Procter and Gamble into being a leader in this new kind of soap. The reason we don't have Procter and Gamble as an example of, oh, here's a company that blew it, like Nokia or Kodak, is because they successfully made the transition to a completely different chemical basis for their key products. And you didn't hear about it because it was a success. So that reverse mentoring, getting young people to coach your executives, that's a great way to do it.
Yeah. And I can speak personally. P&G is a large partner and member of GS1's community, and I've been to their innovation group, and they're always looking for new ways to innovate and to connect with their customers. I mean, they're very forward thinking. That's a cool story to hear. I wasn't aware of that whole bit.
Yeah, and actually, if any P&G people are listening, if I got any details of that story wrong, I apologize. I read about it in a business magazine, but I think it's a great story.
Yes, it is. So just two last questions to wrap up. From your perspective, and I can't wait to hear your answer here. What today is your favorite technology and why?
Oh, you mean stuff that we're using absolutely right now today?
Or you as a person, or you as what's coming? Anything, just because I'm sitting here with my iPad and my iPhone and my PC. You have this purview of all this cool stuff. What's your favorite thing right now?
Oh, I have to say it's virtual and augmented reality. I have 3 virtual reality headsets. I do all of my fitness in virtual reality. So this morning, using the app VZ Fit, a huge shout out to these guys, I was having a virtual reality headset, and I was on a stationary bike in my bedroom, and I was cycling down the street using Google Street View of a street. I was cycling down the main road in Istanbul. And then I finished that ride, and then I started riding through some hills in Slovenia. And so I actually have not felt hemmed in during lockdown because I've been cycling the world in virtual reality.
Oh, that's
yeah.
So cool.
and I lost 20 pounds. So, yeah.
All while you're in the forest in your own home.
Yeah, exactly. And so the opportunity for us to learn and to travel in a very sustainable, low carbon footprint kind of way, and to do training in virtual reality, that's going to unlock a whole bunch of things beyond just the games that are there today. The other thing that I'm very excited about is augmented reality. And so that's where you're still looking at the real world, but you're looking through some kind of screen that's giving you an information layer about the things that you're looking at. And actually, the mixed reality is the real term for that. And so the potential for augmented reality is to make the invisible visible. And so one really great example of this comes from a company called Bad VR. They're a startup in Los Angeles, and they have a product called C Signal that, using your phone, so the phone is the augmented reality device, you can actually look around, and they visualize with these bars all over the area where you are, the strength of your Wi-Fi signal or your 3G signal or your 4G signal or your 5G signal. So you can actually look through your camera of your phone at the area where you are and see where the signal is good and see where it's bad, and then go sit in the place where it's good with your laptop. Yeah, so it's making the invisible visible. And then if you take this principle and you apply it to, I don't know, all the information in the internet, and then give people the power to overlay the information that's relevant to them to their environment as they move through it, this is going to be utterly transformational over the next decade. It's going to take a little bit for all of the pieces to come into play, and I can't say exactly when it's going to be common, but I can tell you by 2030 it'll be common. But the different building blocks will develop at a different time. So it's hard to say, like, yes, we'll all be using this by 2027. I don't know, but by 2030 for sure.
Yeah, I was actually speaking with CEO of a company called Ox, and I think it's getox.com, startup company that was just doing that for supply chain, leveraging Google Glass and backends to do pick and packs and to do other things. And we're seeing it in a lot of exploration with this augmented reality in consumer shopping, going through a grocery store.
Yes.
And seeing things and saying, okay, I'm in the app for this grocery store. I'm a valued member. We have a partnership, but I also have celiac disease, so I can't have any gluten. And so that kind of tells you right up front. Some really cool experiences there. All right. So the last question we have for you today is, what has something that's happened recently or maybe way back in your past that has just stopped you in your tracks and, as some people might say, caused your brain to break or pause or totally change into a new thing? Like it was a bit of information, or it was just something that broke your brain and took you to a new direction. What can you leave us with today for our last question?
Okay, one of the questions that we in our industry get all the time is what's the point of 5G? and it's like, okay, yeah, it's faster and all that kind of stuff. It wasn't until, I don't know, I think maybe a year and a half ago, and I was having a conversation with somebody who was actually talking about robotics, and they were saying that the thing is that we need to move the processing off of the robot. We need to have the processing somewhere else, but we need to, because the robot needs to be small and light. Actually, sorry, it was a drone. The drone needs to be very small and light. And I suddenly realized, wait a second, this is the same kind of problem that we're looking at with augmented reality glasses. There's a lot of processing that needs to happen, but it needs to happen not on the device, because you want to have the device to be as small and as light as possible. And I thought, well, wait a second, that's the same thing that you need to have for robots. And wait, you need to have the same thing that's happening for visual analytics, because you want the end cameras to be small and cheap, but you want the visual analytics to happen somewhere else. And I suddenly realized that there's multiple industries right now that are all driving towards having the end device, instead of being having a gigantic chip in it that's very expensive and generates a lot of heat and draws a lot of energy, which is kind of what we have now with our laptops and our smartphones, switching to end devices that are small and light, that then connect to a big fat server stack that's doing all kinds of astonishing, just processing, quantum, visual analytics, all kinds of that kind of stuff. And that combination, that link between those two is 5G. And I suddenly realized, wait, okay, so instead of having a big fat chip in the end device, we're splitting the chip. We're having the minimum processing in the end device and the processing in the computer stack that's sitting at the edge of the network, and then 5G provides the link between those two things because it's fast enough and it has the bandwidth to do that. And that is going to be the thing that is going to empower new advances in all kinds of different hardware end devices in all kinds of industries. As I said, augmented reality, visual analytics, drones, robotics, gaming. This particular paradigm of that split chip with 5G as the link between, that completely made me go, wow. We are on the verge of a completely new paradigm for where computing is, because this is very cloud now, and it's actually going to unleash just incredible things that we cannot even imagine. The same way you were just talking about augmented reality being very good for picking and for grocery store shopping, absolutely. But I read an article recently. Bill Gates was being interviewed in 1993 about what will the internet do, and he's like, well, you'll be able to read any book from any library in the world,
Right.
which is true, but that's not actually the magic of the internet is again also putting it together with other technologies like mobile and smartphones and location, and suddenly you have Uber, and so I think the examples that I've been giving, even for augmented reality, the stuff we're thinking of now, this is the stuff that we have mired in our current paradigms, because what's coming and what's going to be unleashed by this split chip paradigm, we can't even imagine today. Check back in 5 years and we'll be able to go, yeah, there was this big thing and we just didn't see it and we were sitting right on top of it and and then it exploded and everything changed.
Yeah. I mean, I heard somebody say a couple months back, it's like, imagine yourself back in 1930 and try to explain to everyone the internet or a web page. You're asking me about stuff that we're going to figure out as we go along. Well, Leslie, I can't thank you enough. On behalf of GS1 US and our community, thank you for spending the time with us here today. Leslie Shannon, Head of Ecosystems and Trend Scouting at Nokia. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie.
Thank you for joining the Next Level Supply Chain with GS1 US. If you enjoyed today's show, you can subscribe to our feed or explore more great episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to share and follow us on social media. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.